And away we go. A good Monday to you, everybody. I'm Chris Landry, and this is Scout's Eye on College Football. Ready for another week of college football discussion here, and NFL discussion here on the Landry Football Network. Scout's Eye on College Football, and we're going to take a look at everything going on around the world of college football. And man, was it a fascinating weekend? Even though, as we warn you, there wasn't a lot of fascinating games, there's always a lot of fascination that goes on in weeks like this that we've got so much to get to. Everything from Oklahoma struggling, but finding a way to get it done, and a awful looking Penn State Illinois game, and nine overtimes. Listen to me. Texas Tech losing a game, losing a lead to Kansas State, and ultimately costing Matt Wells his job. Yes, Matt Wells has been fired at Texas Tech, so we have another coaching opening. We'll get the latest on that. All sorts of stuff. Got a rundown. I just put little keynotes of things I wanted to get to today, and I think I got to like 21 of them, and just a whole bunch of them. But we're going to get there. We're going to get there. And reminder, I'll be doing SEC football and beyond right after this. I'll be doing it solo. My producer, Dan Matthews, usually joins me on the show. Dan is out this week. He is busy with the World Series, a lifelong Houston Astros fan. But also one of the key bigwigs at 680 The Fan in Atlanta, the big flame-throwing Dickey broadcasting station. He's out covering that for the Braves. So he's got the Braves, which is kind of the team he covers, and then he's got his his hometown team that he grew up with, the Houston Astros. So he's obviously very, very excited. Also, a reminder of a couple of things as we get going. We do the show live so that you can join us here in the chat room and bring your questions, bring your comment. Hey, Joe Foten has joined us already. We'll be getting to all of your comments, all of your questions inside the chat room today. So please join us. Very simple. If you're listening to this show on podcast form, then we'll certainly invite you to join us. Go to LandryFootball.com, click follow Chris on Twitch. You can follow us there. You can follow us on YouTube, on Twitter Live as well as we do the show. Join us in the chat room. Jeff Parrott has joined us as well. So a reminder to sign up for the Landry Football Podcast channel. The best way to do it is to go to LandryFootball.com, and you can get, you can get the podcast there and listen to it, and download the podcast right there. We've got some great news to tell you about from the great folks at the Daily Tip, presented by BetMGM. We'll get to that a little bit. Also, LandryFootball.com, working through all the film as we do in the early part of the week, getting it up there for you at LandryFootball.com. All the film and breakdowns of everything that's going on, everything that's taken place. Check it out at LandryFootball.com. Got those done as well. So, where to start? I don't know quite where to start. I'll just start with a couple of things that I think are intriguing. One is just kind of how things are looking overall. Georgia had the bye week. They're number one. Everyone is secure in understanding that the Georgia Bulldogs certainly look like the best team in the country, and not even close, quite frankly. I think the big issue is, and I'm get asked this a lot this week on different appearances on different shows, and I usually, when I grade the teams, grade the games, and I, obviously got a form and a grade sheet, and obviously every game that a team plays, you just kind of pile it upon one another, and you get a feel for kind of how teams are progressing. Look, I think you can look at the number 2 spot, and it's really not relevant who's 2 or who's what. I think it really is about right now. If you look at Alabama, if you look at Ohio State, you look at a few teams, and you see if you look at everything and say, how does this play out? I think it's a good question because outside of Georgia, there's no team that's been dominant. Georgia's been dominant on defense. Look, they have been um, dominant against teams that are not good. They've been, look, there's only so much you can look at and say, look at who they've played, who haven't they played. I think you can hold that against a team so much, but they certainly have looked dominant. Alabama has looked vulnerable. Um, we know that there were struggles against Florida. There were struggles against A&M. If you didn't watch the entire game, and certainly if you didn't watch the tape, and even if you didn't watch the entire game, you um, probably have a different view of how that game looked against Tennessee. Tennessee played with Alabama fairly well. There's no doubt Alabama pulled away at the end, and I think that there are a couple of things that jumping out at me at Alabama at this late stage that would indicate to me that this is a trend, that they do stray too far away from the run game. I think they're um, certainly as it relates to um, playing a team like Tennessee. I thought Tennessee defensively rallied very, very well around the ball. I think Alabama is just not dominant running the football and not committing to running the football probably as much as they should. And I thought they made some big plays in the game, but offensively, they're leaving a lot of plays on the field. There are drops, there's some miscommunications. I think there's some issues on offense. I think Bijan Robinson is um, B-Rob, really doing a good job running the football. I just don't think that they're committed and focused enough to it. And defensively, they're not dominant. They're not. And I think the reality is they're not as good as they were last year. Well, you're never going to be the same team every year. They're still really good. They are still, certainly playoff caliber, but they've got to win the rest of their games. Ohio State is playing good ball. Again, well, they're not playing anybody. Look, they held Indiana to 80 yards. They are hitting their stride on offense, and they're playing good on defense. They are really good. I was impressed with how Oregon really finished against UCLA, kind of took over the game midway through. Boy, Joe Moorhead has done a phenomenal job with that offense. And I don't think that's a great team, and I still worry about Anthony Brown throwing the football, and I still think there's a chance that they drop a game, one more game rest of the year. But they certainly need to be entered into the mix. I don't think Cincinnati's one of the 4 best teams, but certainly you can put them in that mix. Oklahoma is a flawed-looking team. But, look, when we start figuring out who the best 4 are, it's about putting together the best resumes. It's going to be interesting. So let's kind of take a look at what I saw in an overview. And again, detailed breakdowns are going to be over at LandryFootball.com. And I get into the conference shows, I'll get into it. But looking at Oklahoma and their struggles against Kansas, they were real. They were out of sorts on defense quite a bit. Um, they are small on the back end of their defense. They struggle against 50-50 balls. I just don't think this is the defense that people made them out to be. They're just not. And offensively, Caleb Williams is bailing him out, and he's certainly given him advantages in the run game. But I think there's limitations in the passing game. I don't know that at this stage I'm not done with my week's grades where I put them or not. But I do think Ohio State is a better team than they are. Um, I think Oregon, is every bit as good, but has some flaws as well as them. So interesting there. Um, Michigan State, and certainly what is the premier game of the weekend. I think the Big Ten is certainly getting fun and huge. And while there may be only one team, Ohio State, that's capable, in my opinion, of being a playoff team, it's going to be fun to watch Michigan State and Michigan in two unbeatens. Then it's going to be fun to see the West race and how that plays out. I thought Northwestern played Michigan well in the first half, and then Northwestern really was kind of overwhelmed. I thought Michigan did a really good job of handling them in the second half. Now what? I'm curious to see. I think that Michigan State has had a little bit more consistency in the passing game, and I'm curious to see. I just don't think they've made enough plays in the passing game still. I think they leave a lot of plays on the field in the passing game. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Over to Penn State in Illinois. I put out on Twitter as I'm watching it. It looked like it was the gang that couldn't shoot straight in quicksand. It was one of the few times that at the end of the game, I was saying, get these two damn teams off the field. It's pathetic, and I've had enough of it. It's an abomination of the game. Give them both a loss. Rarely do I feel that way. It was frustrating. It was a frustrating watch at the end. I'm happy for Brett and Illinois. It's a nice win for them, and they did a nice job just getting it done. Penn State is such a I just don't. You can't trust their coaching and never have since James been there. They are not prepared offensively beyond a healthy Sean Clifford. They have no answer. They have no ability to run the football consistently. And without Sean Clifford in the game or healthy in the game, they got nothing in the passing game. And I thought defensively they were a mess. I thought Brent Pry really struggled in that game. So Penn State now has got Ohio State. That's going to be the third loss in a row for them as they begin their collapse. A quick note on the overtime rule. I mean, it's an abomination. It's stupid. If you want to do. I don't like the college overtime rule, but if you want to have the 2-point conversion immediately in the first overtime. You have to go for two. You can't kick extra points in overtime. That would prevent a lot of the mess that what we had because, again, what you get in these games in this college overtime is just simply line up and defenses at some point can't get it done. In this case, offensively they couldn't get anything done. It's just an embarrassment of a performance. Texas Tech, well, it lost Matt Wells' job. Blew the game to Kansas State. We're going to get into it more again on the Big 12 show and then on LandryFootball.com. That was a tough way to go out. Look, this is a team that when you blow a lead, when you've not had success, it's a big issue. I'm curious to see where they go. I'd love to see a marriage between Sonny Dykes and Texas Tech Um, Sonny's done a really good job at SMU. You may not want to leave Dallas, understandably, if he doesn't. Um, but I've known Sonny since he was a youngster, and his dad, Spike, tried to hire me as a young coach um, way back. I was in my 20s and really liked him a lot. And I don't know, I'm nostalgic. We lost Spike about 5 years ago or so, lost track of time. But it would be great to see Sonny with his offense go back to where he grew up, where his dad coached. But there'll be some other guys that they'll consider as well, I'm sure. A job that's not open that may come open pretty quickly is Virginia Tech. What a bad loss to Syracuse. I just don't know at this point how Justin Fuente saves his job. If you look at the rest of the way, and I know that how they go about doing this, pardon me, got Georgia Tech, BC, Duke, Miami, Virginia. The Syracuse loss was bad. Uh, uh, you know, a 5-0 run, certainly a loss, which I see there 4 potential losses there. I think 3 or 4 losses out of that, it's completely curtains for him. I just don't know at this point that he survives either way. The relationship hasn't been that good. We've not seen the growth. Very, very disappointing that has not worked out. And we'll get into that and who I've got in mind there. And I really thought Justin would do a better job in Blacksburg. Just hadn't happened. Really feel bad for all involved there. Iowa State, Oklahoma State was every bit what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was um, maybe the most intriguing game of the week. I was curious to see. I thought this was evenly matched. I thought Iowa State was right there with Oklahoma State, unbeaten Oklahoma State. And it was a very good game. I thought both teams played well. Could have gone either way. Iowa State impressed with what they were able to do. LSU, and we're going to get to all your questions here, Jeff and Rich, Coach, and hey, Joe Foy. Join us in the chat room. We'll get to it. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin really did a number on LSU. I thought LSU played well for a quarter, and it was complete domination after that. LSU, a lot of talk about how the offense, the running game was found. It was found against Florida. We discussed it that, they wouldn't, that Florida did a very poor job of adjusting. And so let's see how much better this LSU run game was going to be. I said on Friday, Thursday show that dropped on Friday, that I thought that there was every bit the opportunity for LSU to run the football against an Ole Miss defense. But, Ole Miss played well defensively against LSU, and you just saw that LSU, the disaster keeps coming. And I'm not sure that the Ed staying on is working like they thought. Things are not going smoothly there, as you might expect. Coaches are 1 foot out the door. It's not a good situation. I will at some point have a special post on LandryFootball.com that I'm working on. I can confirm that Lane Kiffin is definitely pushing hard behind the scenes for the LSU job. His agent's working and pushing him hard. I'm not saying that's where LSU's going. He absolutely is not interested. He wants the job. He wants it badly. Certainly, the LSU job is a prime one. He feels he knows what he can do there. So I don't. People have asked me about Lane Kiffin and LSU. The only question there is, what does LSU think? Where is he on LSU's list? There is no scenario where Lane Kiffin turns this job down. If you hear that he backs out or takes his name out or quote unquote turns it down, you know how that works. it's because he's not getting it, which I'm not quite ready to go there yet on what's going to happen. But I do know that Lane has actively pursued this job and will continue to do it through his agent. What a job by Oregon coming back against UCLA. Joe Moorhead's done a phenomenal job. The only game they've lost is to Stanford, and when Joe wasn't there, they dominated UCLA. They do such a really good job with their run game. They're without their top back, quarterback's limited. I got to tell you, that's a tremendous job. The only question is, can they run the table there? And I still think that's going to be a challenge. If you look at it, Washington's not very good, and that's always a tough game. Washington State's a challenge. At Utah, look out. That's a game that could trip them up. And then Oregon State at home is, tricky. Oregon State beat Utah this week, and what was a surprise that shouldn't have been a surprise. We told you about it, but if they're able to get that done, and then they're able to win the Pac-12 championship game, what does that do? Because right now, listen, I'll go along with anyone. Let's say they play whoever they play in the South. They beat them, a 11-1 Oregon team that wins the Pac-12 championship game. I just don't see how, from a fairness standpoint, they would rank behind Ohio State after having beaten them on the road. Even though I would tell you that right now Ohio State looks more complete and better. And people ask me that all the time. Who is the best looking on film is one thing. But I don't know that that you can – that head-to-head to me needs to mean something. So what would that mean? Would that mean potentially Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and then, who that fourth team would be? Could be an Oklahoma, could be a Cincinnati. I think it would be Alabama if Alabama were to win out, but that's a tall order there. So a lot of football left, but let's see this Oregon team and can they handle prosperity? That's been the key for Oregon. If you look at it, big games, they play well, but it's the games, the innocuous games that you think they're not going to have a problem. They play down to their opponent. Can't have that happen again. Pittsburgh's offense continues to be outstanding. Got to keep reminding everybody, got to keep reminding myself. Week 2, was it, or week 3? Lost to Western Michigan, the only loss they've had. I know the ACC's down. Darn it, this team is good. They're not playoff good, but they're a good offense. They dominated this Clemson team. This Clemson team is just a shell of itself. It has no answers on offense, and the defense just can't hold on. I mean, it's just holding on to the rope, and they just get shaken loose every game. It is a absolute mess. Wisconsin beats Purdue, pounds them. We got Minnesota dominating Maryland. The Big Ten West, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, that's going to be a lot of fun. Did you see Wake Forest put up 70 points against Army? Wake Forest scored every time, every possession against Army. They gave up 56 points. There was a lot to be learned from that game about Wake, the good and the bad. We'll, again, break that down for you. BYU 4-0 against Pac-12 teams, beating Washington State. See all the turnovers in Boston College, Louisville? Embarrassing. Tennessee played well. Didn't play clean. They made mistakes. They left some plays on the field as well. But I thought they played well. I thought they played hard on defense. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, I don't think Alabama played anywhere close to a clean game. The final score it was deceiving. It was closer than that final score indicated. I thought it was interesting. I look back, a lot of people have questioned, and even on social media, what about the Bryce Young touchdown? He did fumble before crossing the goal line. Even looking at the coach, it looked like he recovered. They certainly ruled that he recovered the ball. you can't really tell on the film. It looks like, well, certainly this, that Bryce was at the bottom of the pile. Can I tell you who recovered it? Don't know, but it certainly was ruled that he recovered it. But it was very curious to see the replay ruling say that the call stands, meaning they called it a touchdown going in. Well, it wasn't a touchdown going in. It was a touchdown once they recovered the fumble. So that was an issue and another problem. The biggest problem I'm seeing on defense for Alabama is outside of Will Anderson, Phil Mathis is playing well. They're not the difference makers we've seen before. And the mistakes that are being made are more in the secondary. That was the bugaboo in this game. Now, I will say this, that nobody left on their schedule can really attack with tempo in the passing game as good as Tennessee. But that is something to look forward to. And I thought Evan Neal played very well on the offensive line, but you still got problems on the right side. I think there's a limitation here. I think Alabama is in the mix with them, but I would tell you that if Alabama played head-to-head against Georgia right now, I think Georgia would win. I'm not saying it would be a blowout, but I think they'd win that game. I think Ohio State might beat Alabama right now. I think those two teams look better on tape than Alabama. And I don't know how much better Alabama's going to get. So I'm very curious to see how much they improve and get. All they need to do is just get better and get there. I get that. But that's not all they need to do if they're going to advance once they get there. They're going to have to get quite a bit better. And I'm just starting to look like maybe this is just not that type of team for Alabama this year. Outside of those two teams, though, Alabama, even with their warts, are better than Cincinnati. They're better than Oklahoma. They're better than Michigan. They're better than Oregon. They're better than anybody else, with the possible exception of Ohio State and Georgia. I think those two teams beat Bama. We'll see, though. A little early. Still got some time left. I think, though, the variable is, do those teams come back? Do those teams struggle in the moment? That would be the only thing. We know that Alabama usually plays well in the moment. I'm curious to see. USC's such a mess. Notre Dame put them away. Didn't play great in their own right, but they put them away. The USC search continues there. Ohio State, as I mentioned, is dominating teams playing well. How bad is South Carolina? I'll tell you how bad South Carolina is. They're almost Vanderbilt bad. They're really, really bad. There was a point through three quarters they had like 7 yards. They're a disaster. Yeah, there are personnel issues. I just don't know that. It is a personnel issue in a large part, but I think they're going to fall short on the coaching end quite a bit as well. This was A&M rolled. I don't know that really a whole lot to take out of the game from A&M. South Carolina is so bad. It really was. Bad look for North Carolina State versus Miami. Come on. Got a chance to win that game. This is a Miami team that's up and down. NC State's got a little bit of that in them as well. Bad look there. San Diego State and Brady Hoke continues to win. So that's a lot of fun. Hey, I want to tell you, as we get ready for this week's game, and before I jump on your questions that you have, I want to tell you about good friends at the Daily Tip. If you're into sports betting, you know just how quickly the lines can change. And when you've got a lot riding on those odds, it pays to stay ahead of the curve. So before placing your bets, listen to the Daily Tip presented by BetMGM for the best betting analysis and information. They are fun, informative, and extremely helpful. A lot can change between last night's game and today's odds. The Daily Tip gives you an early look at all the angles. The hosts, Michael Jenkins and Chelsea Messenger, break down the biggest takeaways and make sure that you know everything you need to know to bet smarter. With featured guests like bookmakers, Odyssey insiders, and BetMGM experts, you've always got a fresh take on the action. Your friends will be wondering what you know that they don't. Not that you have to tell them where you heard it. As much fun as it is to bet on the game, it's even more fun when you've got the inside scoop. Ready to bet with an edge? Tune into the Daily Tip presented by BetMGM. Listen weekdays 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern on Odyssey, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. So this week's matchups that I'm going to get into on LandryFootball.com, I'm going to do a special one on Michigan State. Probably do one on Florida, Georgia as well. Texas Baylor is a sneaky game that I'm looking forward to watching. Ole Miss Auburn is another one that's really intriguing. I want to see what Auburn has there. Miami Pitt. Will Pitt rebound? Will Pitt take care of business and handle Miami, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and UCLA, Utah. But we'll have all the breakdowns as we always do over at LandryFootball.com. But we'll have special breakdowns on a couple of them, likely again Michigan State. So let's see what's in your mind today in the chat room. How impressed were you with the Illinois win? Hey, Joe Foten, not at all. Well, look, I wasn't impressed at all. For Illinois, any win is a good win. So kudos for them. I'm going to hand out game balls in a second. I can't give them a game ball, but it was a win. Jeff says, who do you think about the Saints game tonight? Saints play the Seahawks tonight. Like the Saints in a close one, but we'll see. It's not as I think they're probably going to be a little closer than some might think. Rich Coach says, thoughts on Matt Wells getting fired by Texas Tech. We went over that. Let's see here. Chris, what are your thoughts on the air raid and will it work in the SEC? If not, how long should Mississippi State stick with Mike Leach? There are different types of air raid, okay? There's no such thing as an air raid offense. There are versions of it and derivatives of it. I don't know what Mississippi State's going to do, quite frankly. I think the expectation is probably a little bit higher there than Mike's going to be able to achieve. I think the biggest issue is Mike's not going to recruit well enough. You have Ole Miss doing so well in their own state. That doesn't help him. LSU's a mess, but that's, even in a mess, you beat Mississippi State, and they'll be better, always. Alabama certainly is. Arkansas's, in my opinion, better and certainly further along. I think the problem is that because they don't run the football and they don't try to run the football, they're going to have a hard time being so one-dimensional, having consistent success. Look, if you're comfortable at Mississippi State with winning 7 games and going to a bowl game, I think you could do that every year. I don't know. Do you know Mississippi State fans? Did anybody sign up for that? If they do, I think you got your guy. And, if you're looking for more than that, I don't think you're going to get that. Maybe occasionally you can get an 8 or 9 win out of them, depending on how things fall. But no, I don't. I think it's a league that has to be first rooted and foremost into personnel. You have to get good players. You're seeing that at Florida with, a Dan Mullen, who's a really good coach, I think. But, without elite talent, you're not going to be an elite coach. So I do think that I think Mike has a glass ceiling that's just a little better than mediocre. And I don't think I don't know how long they'll stay. But is the air raid work, the version that Mike runs, I don't think it's sustainable because it's too myopic. The there's no system that wins, to answer your question. There's no, will this work? There's no such thing. There's no such thing as a pure air raid. The derivatives where you can run the football and run some of those concepts, I think can work, do work, have some success. But the way Mike does it, I think there's limitations there. Rich Coat says, interesting in the Wake Forest and Army game, despite Wake Forest putting up 70 in Army, they were dominated by time of possession 17-17 to Army's 42-43 minutes. Yeah, because Wake Forest, it's very simple how that happens. Wake Forest is throwing it right over the top of them, scoring quickly, and Army is running right through Wake Forest's defense, but they run the football. They run the option. That's exactly what you would expect in that game. I don't know that I expected 70 points, and I didn't expect giving up 56, but I expected the time of possession to be exactly what it was because of the style of both of the teams. Game balls of the week, offensive player of the week, speaking of Wake Forest, I got to go with Sam Hartman, quarterback at Wake Forest. He was 23 of 29, 458 yards, 5 scores. He rushed for 22 and another touchdown. Again, scored on every possession. Thought he did a good job, easily going through his progressions, made good decisions, true drop back game. There was some RPOs. He was 8 for 10 on the RPOs. Really, really impressive. Not even close to a turnover. Very clean game, very explosive game. Defensive player of the week, I got to go with Kayvon Thibodeaux. Man, was he big for Oregon against UCLA. Dominated at the line of scrimmage. He had 9 tackles, 4.5 for loss, 1 forced fumble, and 2 sacks. Looking every bit of the top pick in the draft type of player. Lots of pressures. Really gifted physical player, and I think he's got a really good chance to go number 1. Team of the week, I don't know where to go on the team of the week, to be quite honest with you. You could go with, hey, Illinois is bad and you win. That's one. I would probably say Oregon and their performance. But let's talk about, Brett Bielema, Illinois a little bit. I thought Chase Brown ran the ball well. I give Brett Bielema a lot of credit for condensing the formation and running the football right at Penn State, and they couldn't handle him. I'd maybe nominate Pitt as maybe one of the teams of the week. I expect them to be Clemson, so maybe not so much there. But I'm going to give a game ball to Mark Whipple, the offensive coordinator there. It is still the best, most talented defense in the ACC, Clemson, and the best offense in Pitt. But this goes to show you say, well, how does that matchup go? Very simple. You hear me talk about complementary football. The defense may be the best defense, but without any help from your own offense, it won't be good enough, and vice versa. You saw Pitt. Their defense is not great, but able to get stops, mainly due to Clemson's ineptness on offense. They, if you didn't catch it, benched DJ Uiagalelei. But you look at Clemson defensively, they just got no help at all. Speaking of time of possession, they controlled it 36-23, converted 10 of 18 third downs against this Clemson defense. Really, really impressive. In what was a game, I thought both highlighted the defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, at Oklahoma State, and John Heacock of Iowa State. I thought Iowa State was outstanding. I thought the defense played the pivotal role in the comeback. They limited Oklahoma State to just 7 points and 144 yards in the final 2 quarters, allowed 0 third down conversions over 5 attempts. Additionally, Iowa State held Oklahoma to just 20 rushing yards in the second half. And the defense did it with the game on the line. They were um, driving for a game-tying field goal. Very, very impressive. So, game balls on offense, quarterback Sam Hartman, running back Devin Ashane from Texas A&M, Chase Brown of Illinois, receiver Jacory Roberson of Wake Forest, Tyree Ritchie, look him up, Northern Illinois, really good player. Romeo Dubes of Nevada, look him up, really good player. Tight end, Cole Keft of Minnesota. Left tackle, Charlie Cross of Mississippi State, going up against Vanderbilt. Joshua Pena of Navy, the left guard, was outstanding this past week against Cincinnati. Luke Whippler um, uh, of Ohio State at center and Paris Johnson of Ohio State at right guard were outstanding. And I thought Luke Goki of Central Michigan was really good at right tackle. On defense, in a losing effort, Neil Farrell played well. Thought at defensive tackle, Manny Jones of Colorado State was outstanding. At edge defender, Kayvon Thibodeaux of Oregon and Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan. At linebacker, Cameron Carter of Colorado State, Avery Robertson of Oregon State. Jay Shaw, corner from UCLA, Tyreek Chappell of Texas A&M. At both were outstanding. At safety, Joey Blunt of Virginia and Coco Azima for Northwestern were really, really good. Freshman of the week, probably go with Caleb Williams again. Offensive line, I think it's Ohio State's. Right now, the offensive line's playing better than any offensive line in the country. So those are some of my thoughts this week. Again, this week I will be breaking down Michigan, Michigan State, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Baylor, Ole Miss, Auburn. Those are the focus games. I'm going to be breaking them all down for you inside the film room, conference by conference, though. Coaching openings right now, Texas Tech, USC, LSU, Washington State, Georgia Southern, and UConn. We'll be keeping you up to date over at LandryFootball.com for all the latest there. The inside scoop. And how I do it is not just with the schools, but always tell folks, and here's a little bit of a tip, when people throw out who they like, they're hearing it because there may be an ex-player at a school or what have you, or they know somebody at the school, and they just hear gossip. In order to really know what's going on, you've got to get the information from both sides. So if there's rumors about a candidate, you got to know what the candidate and the agents and the agents lie, but in my relationship with them, I usually can get good information because I deal with them so often. To try to get the right information is important to help over the landscape of all their clients. So sometimes the real key is to work both sides of it. If you know both sides of it, the candidate and the school, then I think you can get a little bit better information. That's what we'll do for you over at LandryFootball.com. So make sure that you check all of that out at LandryFootball.com today. Take advantage of the football season sale. Hey, be back in a few at top of the hour, SEC football and beyond. I'll be doing it solo today. We'll be breaking down all the games, all the news notes and information going on inside the SEC. SEC football and beyond coming up, top of the hour. For Scout's Eye on college football this week, I am Chris Landry. See you over at LandryFootball.com.